Nope, this is gonna be the one. Just let's get started. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and I'm a photographer and video producer in Atlanta, Georgia, and welcome to another one of my oddly specific lighting breakdowns. The first three of these were all single individuals that were talking either directly to camera or were being kind of interviewed by somebody who was off camera. In this one, I want to set up a frame where you have two people that are talking to each other. So it'd be like a knee-to-knee kind of interview or podcast layout. I have two setups that I use for this. One is a little bit complicated, but it looks great. It needs time, it needs a lot of equipment and space to do. So this one is designed more for like small conference rooms, and that's what I've kind of simulated here. It's simple to set up. The number of light stands and stuff that you have to carry are fewer than the other by a long shot. You can do it quickly and still get a decent looking frame. So let's get started. The first thing that you have to consider when setting all this up is what is my available light. So when you walk in that room, you're likely gonna have some ceiling fixtures in there that are probably around 2700K, 3200K. They're gonna be a yellowish light. You'll likely have some windows that are giving you daylight, which is gonna be closer to 5600 to 6500K. So you're gonna have this blue light coming in from outside and this yellow light in the room, and you've gotta either pick one or do neither. In this case, I have closed off all my curtains, so I'm getting no outside light, and that's generally my preference because that light changes all during the course of what's going on. And I'm using the fixtures that are in the room. So I have can lights in here that are just 3000K can lights, and I'm using those to create my ambient. If I didn't want to use those, if I wanted complete total control, I would set up a couple of LED fixtures that I could just bounce off the ceiling, and then I have control of not only the intensity but the color of the light. But everything about this is to try to keep it really simple. The second thing to consider is where you're gonna shoot into the room. Obviously I'm shooting into the corner here so I get some natural depth. The corner of this conference room table, by the way, is what we're gonna call zero. Everything that I'm gonna describe is coming off of this corner. And if you drew a straight line from that lens to this corner to the corner of the room, it would be a straight line because that's how I set it up. The next thing to consider before we get into the equipment and gear is like where your subjects are. The subjects in this case are what I would call almost uncomfortably close. But I want this frame, if you look, I am sitting right on the rule of thirds grid line with my face. And if I move over here, same thing. I'm sitting with my rule, so we're looking at each other, but I have some breathing room on the back side of my subjects. And that's gonna allow me to crop in on this a little bit in post if I need to, but it keeps everybody from being really close to the edge with this huge gap of space in between. And part of what makes that work is that lens. So that lens is a 50mm lens. It's at f2.8. The ISO is 800. White balance is set to 2900K with a green shift of 1, and it is 11 feet from this point. The white balance and green or magenta shift for all these cameras is gonna be different because no two camera bodies and lens combinations, in my experience, end up being the same. I used to set white balance on one camera and then just whatever that was, I would put it into the others thinking everything would match. It doesn't work that way. So now I actually take a white balance reading for each of the three cameras and just let them do what they're gonna do. The next camera over here, let me move to this spot. This is an 85mm lens. It's at f4. The ISO is 1600. 3000K is the white balance setting in there, also with a green shift of 1. It is 10 feet from this point, and it's exactly 25 degrees over from the main camera. Almost those same settings will apply to the other angle over here. It's an 85mm. It is at 2.5. ISO is 100, 2900K, but there's no green or magenta shift, so everything is set straight up. My 85mm 1.8 Sony lens, for some reason, tends to lean toward magenta, so it doesn't need the shift. It's also 25 degrees over and it's 10 feet off. All three lenses are almost exactly at 42 inches off the floor. And the reason for that is, once I have my tripod level, I want to adjust the tilt axis of the camera until all my vertical lines in the frame are vertical. They're not angled in and they're not angled out. Then I'm going to move the entire camera assembly up or down until I get the framing that I want. So if you look at this, all my vertical lines are straight up and down, and that's because that's what I've done, and that's what you should do because it looks really professional and people will think you're awesome if you do that. I think that's it for the cameras. Let's talk about lights. One last thing before I get into the lighting breakdown. If you're able, get chairs that don't swivel or roll or lean back or anything like that. You will just, if you put your subjects in those, hopefully they will stay where they're supposed to, and you'll thank me later. Let's turn all these lights off and start building this up from scratch. What you're seeing right now is just the ambient light in the room. These are can lights. It's not a very good quality of light, but it's at least the same color and it's relatively even over the room. So that's kind of setting our tone. The key light is a 60-watt LED fixture. It is set 6 feet off the floor, and it's in a 33-inch umbrella with a white interior and a piece of diffusion over the front. In terms of placement, from our 0 point back here at the corner, it is 2 feet forward toward the main camera from that point. So the edge of the diffusion on the umbrella is 2 feet forward. If you move it further forward, further toward the camera, you end up getting a little bit flatter light. If you move it back, you're gonna get more shadows on the face and you're gonna start to get those raccoon eyes and things like that. If you have a surface on your conference room table that is light colored or white that's gonna bounce some light up, you can kind of get away with that. But 2 feet's a good starting point, forward and backward from there. Just for the sake of mentioning it, I have tried this with lanterns, you know, the lantern soft boxes. I don't like them. They throw too much light around the room. And I've tried it with larger umbrellas and diffusion and even soft boxes, like parabolic soft boxes. And for some reason, for my tastes, that 33-inch umbrella creates this pool of light for my two subjects that doesn't have too much effect on what's going on in the rest of the room. It's not changing the exposure back there very much. So I like that. It works for me. It's great. It is, I don't think I talked about the settings. What are the settings? So 60-watt fixture, it is at 80% output and it's set to 2900K with no green or magenta shift. Next, we have our little Pavo bulb, 10C. It's at 25%. There it is, 25%, and it's also set to 29, it's actually at 3000K. The only thing I've done back there is pull it away from the wall a little bit. So I've reduced the amount of light that's hitting that back wall and keeping that from kind of overexposing. Very simple. Last are the two hair lights, and that's it. It's really, there's two little Pavo Tube 2 6Cs. These are the little like foot long ones. They're both set to 100% output. They're at 3000K. And in terms of placement, they're on these little stands. And what I do is take this wide shot and literally just bring those stands in until they're just outside the frame. And then bring them forward until they're not in the frame on either of these other cameras. And that seems to work really well. I don't have to worry about stands back there. They do have the little grids on them. So the grid is kind of keeping that light focused right here. And then if there's glass, like that picture frame back there was reflecting this light. So the grid stops that reflection from bouncing around the room and from just, it controls the light. And that's a good thing. They're set at a 45-degree angle and they're right by each subject. And in terms of height, again, I just raise them up until they're outside of that frame. So that thing, it's arm's length away. It's probably 30 inches, whatever, however long my arms are. That's it for the lighting. This is a really, really simple setup. For me, what makes this really work is that basically everything is on this one C stand and two tiny light stands. I have a 40-inch extension arm coming off a sandbagged C stand. Everything up there is very stable. And I've also got my audio up there. I've got a carbon fiber boom pole with a microphone that's just pointing kind of down toward this center mark. And that's it. It's quick to set up. It's relatively simple. I really don't think I have anything else to add. I hope these are helpful. I hope that it's not too granular or too general, or I don't know. If you have questions about how I do what I do, post a comment down below. And if you have comments about how I could do what I do better than what I do, definitely post a comment down below. That's going to do it for this one. I thank you so much for watching.